Hey, everybody. I'm so excited today because we have an amazing guest with us. His name is Dr. Arthur Schwartz, and he is the president of character.org, and he's carved out some time out of his super busy schedule. So thank you, Arthur, for spending some time
Mike,
with us.
you are welcome, Mike. Happy to be here. Truly am.
Awesome. Well, our listeners, I know are going to be excited to hear your story, and I'd love to just jump right in. Whatever you are comfortable sharing with how you got to become the president of character.org and your journey to get there.
Well, that's a great, amazing opening sort of line of developing a connection with you and your audience. It started the moment that I told my mom when I was 21 years of age that I didn't want to be the lawyer that she always wanted me to be. I wanted to, yep, it started there, Mike, I'm sorry. And instead, then I really gave her some gray hair because I then said, Mom, I'm going to go to New York and be a theater person. And she just, what, but my dad was sort of like, go follow your muse. And so I went to New York. I then ended up stage managing, directing, but then also writing plays. I got a fellowship in playwriting to the Playwright Center in Minnesota.
Wow.
And they were paying me at 26 years of age to write plays. It was amazing, Mike. But to support my playwriting habit, I started doing artist in schools throughout Minnesota, and I fell in love with it. Both my parents were teachers in the school district of Philadelphia, and it's in my DNA, and I just fell in love with education. I came back to Philadelphia where I grew up after being in Minneapolis, and one thing led to another, and the next thing you know, I am involved in directing the dropout prevention programs for the school district of Philadelphia. It was just an amazing journey from theater to schools, and then suddenly someone said, why don't you go get your doctorate in education? Well, really? What do you, at Harvard? And I'm like, no, yeah. And then finally I applied, I got in, and then they said, so what are you going to study? And I hadn't really thought about it, except I'd worked with a lot of kids in Philadelphia who lost hope. I could feel it. It was palpable. And I said, that's what I want to study. I want to study, how do you lose hope at 14? Mm-hmm. And that led me down or up, spiraling up into the world of virtues. Faith, hope, and love, right, are the theological virtues. And the next thing I know, I just got so interested in these things called virtues, core values. And I just have not stopped since then. And right when I got my doctorate, I got a call from the John Templeton Foundation to ask me to join the foundation. I was the 5th employee, the first academic. I spent 15 years there. And the moment I left to go to the Air Force Academy to become the senior scholar there, focusing on character, I joined the board of character.org. And so I was on the board for 12 years before I became president of the organization. And all I can say is character has been my ally ever since. I was writing characters when I was in the theater, and then I started studying the idea of character, and I'm still a student of it all these years later.
You know what I'm so curious about? The powerful moment when you were at Harvard and they asked you, what do you want to study? And you said, hopelessness, 14 years old, and they're losing all hope.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, what do you think it was that really drove you to say, this is it? Were you maybe the 14-year-old kid that felt a little bit of hopelessness, or did you have a brother or sister? I'm just curious if there's some, maybe even subconscious reason why you just said, this is it, or was it more of a conscious decision? Just curious.
My work at the school district of Philadelphia focused on 9th graders. And the reason for that is a lot of times a child has been held back one time in elementary school, one time in middle school. So that by the time she gets to high school, she's 2 years older than her 9th grade cohort. And so we know that's a time where, you get bad report cards in November, December, and you just say, that's it, I'm done. And so we worked with that first 9th grade semester to try to work with as many students as we possibly can. And I got close to one of them, and she didn't come back to her spring semester. And I asked my staff to track her down, please find her in North Philadelphia. And I visited her, and I saw the lack of hope. I saw the hopelessness in her eyes at 14. I just saw it. And it was at that moment that I couldn't get rid of those eyes that just said, I don't have a future.
Wow.
I can't project a better me. And that just haunted me for many, many moons.
Man, I'm grateful that you shared that. And that shows that you have a caring and loving heart, because her eyes and that hopelessness in her eyes haunted you. And I think every listener can relate to that, either if they're looking at the eyes of their own in the mirror, or if they're looking into the eyes of another that they want to help, and that they feel their pain. So yeah, thank you for sharing that, Arthur. And and would you be kind enough to share, I went on your website and I saw the 11 principles, the framework. Would you be kind enough to share that with our listeners? Because it just looks awesome.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I would love to. Before character.org was character.org, the parent name is the Character Education Partnership. And it started in 1993. And it was really an umbrella organization to bring together people who knew that we don't want to just, educate and graduate kids who are college ready. We don't want to educate and graduate kids who might be career ready. We also want to inspire them to be character ready, citizen ready. And so that's sort of the beginnings of the Character Education Partnership. And back then, it was really an organization that tried to kind of be at the be a trailblazer, to kind of be at the forefront of what was new in this thing called character education. And a colleague of mine, Tom Lacona, and several of his colleagues wrote sort of just a white paper on the 11 principles framework of developing a school of character. So it was school-based. And these 11 principles really are sort of the 11 North Stars of what every school should strive for if it wants to create a comprehensive culture of character. So, principle number 1 is that you got to promote core values, right? That the school has to cohere around a discrete set of values that they decide if kindness is going to be one of those values, or whether perseverance is going to be one of those values, or trustworthiness is going to be one of those values. It's your choice. Every school should be able to select its own core values, but that's the beginning part. And then it's how you sort of how you bring together these core values into every aspect of the school, from the cafeteria to the curriculum. And that's hard, because it's easy for a teacher to kind of have a curriculum around perseverance, but it's more difficult to have every single school person, staff member, really support those core values. And it goes beyond just the school staff. So principle number 10 is, all about getting the community involved, including parents. So parents know about these core values. They can reinforce these core values. They can model these core values at home. And so that's just, I could go through each of the 11 principles, but it was a white paper. And then out of this white paper, people said, well, wait a minute, how do we know we're really doing it the way that, each of these principles are articulating? So we began at character.org, CEP, the process to sort of begin to assess, to begin to support those schools on their journey to becoming a school of character. And at some point, the Templeton Foundation, where I was, supported the first national schools of character. And it's an arduous process. It's not easy to become a school of character, but when you do, it means you are breathing each of these 11 principles, that the framework is really at the root, at the core of how the school sees itself and expresses itself.
Now, if a school is listening to it, if a superintendent is listening right now, or a principal, or a director of curriculum, or even a parent that says, that sounds fantastic. How do we implement this? How would they start?
Well, I would go to, character.org, www.character.org, learn about the 11 principles. And I have a colleague, her name is Tamara Nast, former counselor for many years in Michigan, who will talk to you about how to get started. Tamara is just amazing. She is just a star, and she will really get you on thinking about, okay, what's the first step? And a lot of times what schools do is they submit to us what we call a promising practice. And so it might be, let's say, principle number 7 is all about intrinsic motivation. So the kids are not doing this for a blue ribbon, they're not doing this for a grade, that everything that you're doing around these core values are for its own sake, because these values are so important. So you might have a program that really looks at that idea of intrinsic motivation and submit to us. Many schools submit a promising practice around principle number 4, creating a caring community. So you and I could go and talk about all the different ways that you and I have seen a school that is truly a caring community. Usually they have a project, they have an initiative, something that really defines that care. And so submit that as a promising practice. So 1, get in touch with Tamara, or 2, submit a promising practice that we can recognize.
And would you mind, Arthur, just running through, even just quick, just to list them? Because maybe a superintendent or director of curriculum is saying, well, what are the other ones? That sounds great. Just even quick. If just
all right, I will do that. Principle 1, I already talked about, the school creating the core values. Right. Principle number 2 is that these core values have to be laced into how we think, how we feel, our desires, our motivations, and action, what we do. So, we call it thinking, feeling, and doing. Number 3, it's a comprehensive approach. So it's not just something that the gym teachers do, or it's not something that just the first graders do. It's something that is woven across the school. That's really hard. So principle number 3 is something that, we have indicators for that really challenges school. 4, I already talked about, was caring community. 5, it's an opportunity for students to show moral action, that doing part. So whether it's peer mentoring, whether it's something to do with the climate and the environment, whether it's something to do with homelessness, whatever it is, it's an opportunity both in school and out of school to demonstrate that students are really engaged in moral activity and what we call moral action. Next one is, as great as all these ideas are, they also have to be woven into the curriculum. So that's principle number 6. That's a really hard one, for how does a math teacher integrate this? Well, one answer is what we call performance character, persistence, caring about mistakes, that this kind of performance character is woven into every class and into the curriculum. I talked about 7 already, which is motivation, intrinsic versus extrinsic. Right. As a former teacher, I struggle with that, because so many of my students wanted those good grades, right? But that's not intrinsic motivation. Next is that the whole school is a learning community. So it's not just a group of 4 or 5 people, school leaders, who are involved in this, but that everybody has to learn what it means to be a school of character, how these core values are breathing throughout the school. And so how do you demonstrate that? We have examples to show you. The next one is that there's not just the 4 people who are in charge, but it's shared leadership. So you don't want just the principal saying, I want this, I want this. No, you have to demonstrate how the school staff, how the parents, how community leaders are involved in sharing the leadership of becoming a school of character. The next one is, as I was saying before,
Number
is
10.
reaching out to those parents and to those communities and making them partners in this.
Right.
That's a real hard one. And the last one, principle 11, is okay, you have all this in place. How are you assessing that you have all those first 10 principles in place and activated? Show us how you are demonstrating that, you are looking at what you're doing well and what needs to improve. So that's principle 11.
That's awesome. Thank you for running through those. That's
You're welcome.
incredible. And then, I guess one final question, if it's okay with you.
Yes.
What are your personal core values?
I started at the John Templeton Foundation in 1995, Mike, and I had the honor to work with Sir John Templeton, who was born and raised in Tennessee, but became knighted. And he was the founder of the Templeton Mutual Funds, who, by the way, as an academic theater person, teacher, I didn't even really know what the Templeton Mutual Funds were all about, but I became very close with Sir John. And one of the first things he said to me that stuck, that has just never evaporated, it's always been close to my heart, is he said one day to me, Arthur, an attitude of gratitude creates blessings. At the time, Mike, I was not a grateful person or an ungrateful person. It just wasn't really on my radar screen one way or another. But since then, I have created a habit of gratitude in my head, in my heart, and in my hands. So I work hard to really practice gratitude as a core value. That would be one that comes to mind right away.
That's great. That's great. That's beautiful. That's such a gift that he said that to you. And I got that same gift from my father when he said, gratitude precedes happiness.
Yeah.
And it's so true. The more grateful we are, the happier we are, the more blessings and good, healthy things we attract into our lives. So, yeah.
Can I give you one more?
Oh, absolutely. Keep going.
All right.
Yeah.
This one came much later in life for me. And I also want to say that, I had an ally with my wife in terms of, us together realizing how important this core value is to us. And that is purpose. We worked so hard, not only for our children who are now adults, not only for them to be honest, not only for them to, show up on time, not only for them to be the best citizens they can be, but we really together emphasized the purpose-driven life. And I have one son. Yeah.
Rick Warren. Was it from the Rick Warren?
Oh, I've met Rick, and I thought you would know who he is. That's why
I went to his church a couple of weeks ago down in
really?
Orange County. Yeah, I'm out here in Southern California.
Yeah, I knew that, but I mean, I knew you were in Southern Cal. I just didn't know you would, know Rick. But that book, it's not just the book. It is the whole, because there's something called purpose in retirement, right? It's not just
retire and done.
It's retire halftime. What's next? What's my purpose? And so, but for me and my wife with our children, we wanted them to understand this notion of purpose before success. We really wanted them to lead a life where they were filled up with purpose. So we have one child who's a screenwriter and the other is a musician. And we just know that they are purpose driven. And that gives my wife and I just great joy. And so purpose would be another core value that means a lot to me.
That's beautiful. And just, so if anyone's listening, I don't know, I've never met Rick. I just saw him on a screen. He did a virtual session, but
was he wearing his Hawaiian shirt?
I think so. And it was kind of, I don't know if it was a branch or something, but yeah, it was a virtual session with COVID and everyone was sitting outside. It was beautiful. But that book really impacted me as well, Arthur. And that's where I thought, wow, now I feel so grateful and so blessed to be living my divine purpose. And that's, and it's great that your kids are doing that and that you and your wife see that. And That's awesome. Do you want to share another one, or the two, the core values? Because that's great. Gratitude and purpose. Those are huge. I just didn't want to cut you off if you had a third one.
Well, I have many. I mean, I tried to, the important note here is, I study courage. And so what's moral courage, right? The courage to be honest, the courage to tell the truth. But if you were asking me where I really have grown the most in terms of the core value that I don't think was endowed in me, but I had to practice it, it would be forgiveness.
So
I just feel that whether it's forgiving myself or especially forgiving others, I have developed a practice that works for me in terms of being able to forgive, to be able to let go. And it just has made a difference in my life. I don't want to say that it's coming from a divine, theological place, but it is. But the important part is that it's such a difficult virtue to practice, but that once you are forgiving, it is really I feel that there are tremendous health benefits to being a forgiving person.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It reduces our stress. It reduces all that inner turmoil, the inner wrestling match. I'm with you. That one took work for me as well, especially.
It does. And it's not work that once you've done, you
no,
you don't have to go to the gym anymore, right? I mean, it's
every day.
Continually, because it's, we want to hoard our anger, we want to hold on to it and the resentment, and it's just hard to let go. But I really consider it a practice now. It's something that I'm aware of, that I'm holding, and then I have a practice to let go.
Same for me, because I was bullied as a kid. So there was anger towards the bullies, and it took time over years to learn that forgiving them was actually setting me free.
Yeah.
The forgiving them, because being angry at them wasn't going to hurt them at all. I was just hurting myself. So as soon as I was able to forgive them, that just completely freed myself up, and gave me a ton of inner peace and just a lot more grace, because maybe sometimes we may unintentionally say or do something that hurts someone, and we don't mean to. No one means to.
Yeah.
And then they may extend grace to us. So it's just the same, just extending that grace and forgiveness. So gratitude, purpose, and forgiveness. That's huge. Arthur, Dr. Arthur Schwartz. Thank you. No, man. Thank you so much for making time for us today. And I know our guests are going to love this. And if anyone wants to get a hold of you guys, it's character.org.
Yeah.
And they can, and I think, who did you recommend again that they would speak with?
Tamara Nast.
Tamara Nast. Perfect.
And Mike, I just want to say you were born to shine.
Oh man, you too, brother. Thank you for being with us, Arthur. I appreciate you and all the work you guys do.
You're welcome.